Hey everybody, and welcome once again to Nose in the Book, a Bible reading commentary with me, your host, Pastor Justin Van Reed. Great to have you with me once again as we take a look at 4 more passages from God's Word. Before us today, we have from Exodus chapter 36, from Proverbs chapter 12, and in the New Testament from the Gospel of John, we have chapter 15, and from Ephesians, we have chapter 5. So Exodus 36, Proverbs 12, John 15, and Ephesians 5. All right, let's take a look here, going back to Exodus and the building of the tabernacle. And what we have now is the collection has been brought in. In fact, the chapter starts out here, this collection that was taken so that they would have all of what they need in order to build according to the instructions that God had previously given. So they've gotten gold, bronze, silver. They've gotten all kinds of different fabrics and yarns and everything like that. In fact, there's so much that's given that we read here in the opening of chapter 36 that Moses gave the command, and this message was sent throughout the camp. Men and women, don't prepare any more gifts for the sanctuary. We have enough. What a beautiful testimony to the attitude of the people, where in chapter 35, they said, everyone give with generous hearts the following gifts. And they gave with generous hearts, and so an abundance was given so that they don't even have, and Moses says, as I stop, too much. Now, we've got everything that we need. What a beautiful picture there of generosity, of cheerful giving of the people and the offering for the house for God. And then Oholiab and Bezalel, the craftsmen, they go about then building the actual tabernacle according to just as God had made it. So initially here, they're going to start by building the tent itself, and then we're going to go into the various points as over the next several chapters, the specific materials and the various pieces of furniture that are going to be inside of the tabernacle. But here, the framework is built. As we read here, the crossbars, the inside curtains, so the whole frame, if you will, of the tabernacle is built, and all the instructions that God had previously given are carefully followed here by the skilled craftsmen, and so they make it just as God had said. So now we've got a tabernacle. Now we need, with its tents and everything, now we need to fill it, in essence. So that's what's still to come. So that's Exodus chapter 36, preparing for God's presence. All of this, by the way, in the building of the tabernacle, all of this is so that God, remember, don't forget this, in all of the detail, don't forget, this is so that the Lord, in all of his holiness, can dwell here and manifest his presence among the people. They have to do it God's way. They don't just willy-nilly build whatever. They have to do it the way God said, or else he would strike the camp. And so it has to be this way. They have to follow the instructions if they want the Lord to go with them and be among them as their God. All right, Proverbs chapter 12, and again we have a number of short statements, and again just various topics that that are discussed here. For example, let me read a sensible person wins admiration, but a warped mind is despised. Better to be an ordinary person with a servant than to be self-important but have no food. What a great picture there. An ordinary person, a humble person. Rather be, don't think so highly of yourself and have nothing. Rather to be an ordinary person with a servant. That's great. The godly care for their animals, but the wicked are always cruel, we read in verse 10. The wicked are always cruel. Here we see the concern not just for human life, but for animal life. He says this is what the wise would do, because the wise are godly. They care for their animals. How about this one? Fools think their own way is right, but the wise listen to others. Boy, isn't that true? Fools, right? And it kind of goes with the other one here about being self-important. That's what fools think. Like, I know what I know, and I know that I'm right. But the wise listen to counsel. The wise listen to the counsel of others. How about the fact that some people make cutting remarks? People that are just so negative. They cut people down, right? They can't lift up. They can't encourage. It seems like everything that comes out of their mouth is discouraging, is putting others down. He says, some people make cutting remarks, but the words of the wise. What does a godly, wise person do? He says they bring healing. That's somebody who encourages and builds up. It's the kind of person we want to be. There's several more on here about words. It's the third chapter in a row where we've seen several Proverbs about the use of our tongue. Clearly a major theme in what it looks like to live and walk as a wise person, as a godly, wise person. Just one more here. Two more. Work hard and become a leader. Be lazy and become a slave. And then that goes along with verse 27. Lazy people don't even cook the game they catch. They go out hunting, and they're not just hunting for sport. They're hunting for dinner, but they're lazy. So they hunt, they catch the animal, and then they're too lazy to even cook it. But the diligent make use of everything they find. And so the encouragement there to be hardworking, not be lazy. And the last one here, worry weighs a person down. An encouraging word cheers a person up. Right? So the positive there that we can encourage others, and the negative there that when we are anxious, when we worry, all that does is make us feel down. And so as the New Testament says, Jesus says, Matthew 6, don't worry about your life. All right, it's great Proverbs there. Turn into the New Testament, John chapter 15. This is still Jesus on the last night before his arrest and his crucifixion the next day. And he's speaking here at the Last Supper. Chapter 15 starts off, famous passage again about the vine and the branches. Jesus is the vine, people are the branches, and the encouragement here to remain in him, to abide or remain. The word's translated both ways. In the New Living that I have before me, it's remain. Remain in me, and I will remain in you. For a branch cannot produce fruit if it is severed from the vine, and you cannot be fruitful unless you remain in me or abide in me. And, he goes on here to talk about how the world will hate you, right? So this need to be constantly abiding in Christ, constantly just turning to the Lord, resting in him, seeking to obey him, right? This constant need to be like this branch, attached to this vine so that we would find life and that we would be life-producing, fruit-bearing. But then, as I said, he goes on here, the world's hatred. If the world hates you, remember it hated me first. The world would love you as one of its own if you belong to it, but you are no longer part of the world. So he says here, you're not of the world anymore, right? As followers of Christ, there's a difference between your life and the life of an unbeliever. And so this leads me here for the last couple minutes into Ephesians chapter 5. And once again, just another chapter here. Ephesians is fantastic, but these chapters on what it looks like to live and walk as a follower of Christ, to not live as the world lives. That difference that he said there in chapter 4, live no longer as the Gentiles do, but now to live in the Spirit, to walk in the Spirit. He talked about a number of things. Chapter 4, he builds on it here. Imitate God, therefore, in everything you do, because you are his dear children. Live a life filled with love, following the example of Christ, who loved us and gave his life as a sacrifice. That's the picture of love. What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. What is love? According to this passage, it's sacrificial. It's putting ourselves aside, and it's lifting others up, just as Christ did and gave himself as a sacrifice. Then he goes in to talk about sexual immorality here. Major theme, problem in the Old Testament, both in the narrative text where you see it by example, and in the Mosaic law, what is forbidden, talked about in the prophets as a reason for the people's fall. And here in Ephesians 5, well, in the Gospels, Jesus talks about it. Paul's talked about it in a number of places. Here in Ephesians 5, talks about how detrimental it is. And not only, sexual immorality, when we think, not just like adultery and acts like that, but even the words of our mouth. Going back to the Proverbs again here, see the connection. Obscene stories, foolish talk, coarse jokes. These are not for you. Instead, let there be thankfulness to God. So again, the use of our mouths to build others up, not to make dirty jokes, not to bring everyone down, even in the sense of just discouraging their walks with Christ. Goes on here, and in the end, to start to talk about relationships. Beautiful passage here about husbands and wives and the submitting to one another. He says first in verse 21, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Right. So this everyone, and his husband and his wife And it's because it's with everyone. Thinking less of yourself, exalting others, putting others and their needs before your own. And then this beautiful picture of what the successful marriage looks like. How the wife submits to the husband in everything, just as the church submits to Christ. But that picture there, he's going to go on talk here about, this is what I'm talking about, is the picture of Christ in the church. But the need also for husbands to love their wives as Christ loved the church and did what? Gave his life. And so again, that sacrificial love. That's what love is here. And that's, it's not just a wife submitting to the husband, but it's the husband who sacrifices like Christ for his wife. And you got to have it both ways. It ought to be both ways. All right, so that's the great chapters again for us today. Again, we had Exodus 36, Proverbs 12, John chapter 15, and Ephesians chapter 5. Hope to see you again soon. Thanks for being with me. Until next time, keep your eyes on the Lord and your nose in the book.